show the results here for you all. So it looks like A and B are once again the popular choices. This time we have more people who chose B instead of A in my orientation last week, which they're all wonderful options. Even the stipend is wonderful too. So thank you very much for participating and just considering it. All right, so let's keep on going. I want to make sure that we get through this so you can have the rest of your afternoon and evening off. Okay, so some background information on Contra Costa's election department, also the state. So every county within the state of California can use different equipment and have slightly different election procedures, but ultimately they do follow the same set of laws managed by our Secretary of State's office, and we call that the election code. So because our processes are based on the code, including our language requirements and registration procedures, if you've ever wondered why things are the way we do it, then it might be due to the code that we're all required to follow. Now, for Contra Costa County, we have about 700,000 registered voters within our county, which is actually a really high amount considering our population and our nearby counties as well. And in this last election in November 2022, we served over 394,000 voters. I may centrally counted all of those by vote by mails and the ballots from in-person voting at the polls here in our office in Martinez. Now, over 90% of the voters voted by mail with our new vote by mail system. Or not new, but now that everyone's required to get one, a lot more people have been voting that way. So that means the other 10%, which is about 35,000 voters, voted at the polls. So with these high numbers, it would not be possible to hold an election without our poll worker volunteers like you. To give you some more context, we have about 150 polling places across the county in Contra Costa, and we plan to staff each one with 4 to 6 poll workers each election. So for our polling places alone, that is over 900 volunteers. But wait, there's more. We have other positions that we need volunteers for to do other responsibilities too. So with these numbers, I just hope that this kind of shows you how important your contribution is to your local community. And we really do appreciate you considering being part of this process. Now, as of this year, 2023, Contra Costa County is actually part of the U.S. Alliance for Elections Excellence, a little bit of a mouthful. The time, the training, and the services that poll workers like you have contributed help make us a center of elections excellence for this group. And we're only one of about 16 or 18 of them across the entire country. So it designates us as a model for other counties in the nation. And the point of this program is that we collaborate with other election counties and collaborate together with election officials, with experts in different fields to discuss and improve our operations and making sure that we're working to the standard we want to be at. So we expect that in the next few years, we're going to improve our systems and be able to support our volunteers like you even more than we already do. All right, so now, in the past, and it's been a couple years now, but we did used to do orientations live here in our office, and that gave us the opportunity to give you a tour of our office, introduce you to the different people on the teams here, and obviously we are online, so we can't do that. So instead, I will give you a little rundown of all the different teams that make us a Center of Elections Excellence. So, first off, our administration. If you voted recently, you may recognize the name here. Our Clerk Recorder, Register of Voters, Kristen B. Connolly. This is a elected position, and they oversee the staff of both elections and Clerk Recorder. So she was the one that was voted on the last election. Next, you have your Election Day Operations team, which is the team that I am with. Um, we manage all in-person voting operations, so that's election day and also any in-person voting. We also manage the poll worker program. So that means managing all of your profiles, communicating with you, organizing where you're going to be stationed at, and so forth. Um, Aside from that, we also survey different locations to make sure they're accessible and to be polling places. And we also always work on updating our curriculum and training so that we're able to support you better. But our goal is to make the election run as smoothly as we possibly can do. Then we have our voting systems team. So they're like our tech team. They test and maintain all of our voting and ballot counting equipment. They create the ballot for each election, which not every county gets to do. And before each election, they also hold public logic and accuracy testing. So just seeing if the numbers match up with a hand count. And they also do that after the election, doing a public 1% manual hand tally so that we verify the machine counts are correct. So if you actually ever want to see them in person, you can find the information on our elections website in the newsroom or press section. We'll also post it in our social media when the time comes. Next, we have our voter services team. So they maintain a voter file for every registered voter in the county. So if you moved, if you got a name change, if you got married, if you change your party preference, they're the ones who update your file year-round. Now, during election season, they're the ones that issue the ballots to registered voters in the county, including anyone who might be overseas at the time, like if you're in the military. They oversee signature verification, vote by mail extraction, which we will talk about, and they also process all the petitions that are within our county. So if you have any registration questions, they are the team to call. All right, and of course, we do have a candidate services team. So they're responsible for ensuring that the election process is fair and transparent for all the candidates. They help candidates file their nomination paperwork, and they also process the different measures and maintain documents, and they keep records of current local elected officials. And they're also the team that works on the local voter information guide that you get in the mail. Now, this is the county one, not the state one, but they work on that and all the translations that go into it. And then we have our Election Operations Center, which you could say is the epicenter of all of our activities because this is where everything happens. This is where all the ballots and the polling place supplies are organized and extracted or tabulated. Not tabulated, but prepared. And they also receive all the equipment through here. They set up and host our processes. So there's a lot that goes on here. This team manages and assembles all the equipment and the inventory. So there's a lot that goes on here, and that's why it's kind of our main operations center. Oh, and on that note, the drop-off boxes that you see, for the example in this picture, the white one is something that they also set up as well. All right, now we have our own in-house mapping team, which is also kind of rare. This team maintains our precinct and district lines, so the different borders that make up the different neighborhoods and your local districts, like school districts. So with these maps that they create, we're able to give each voter the information that's actually relevant to you and also your communities. So these lines are redrawn every 10 years based off the census data. So the last update was last year in 2022. If you're ever curious about it, you can find these maps on our website as well. And last but not least, our community engagement and outreach team. So they are in charge of educating county residents about the election process and encouraging more participation in the elections. They provide information and planning support to community groups and any organizations that are interested in elections engagement. They also do visits to schools or nonprofits to talk about it. So if you ever want to see what they're doing, you can follow their social media. We have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so forth. You can find it on their website. And speaking of following up and seeing what they do, If you're curious to know more about our behind the scenes, you can schedule like building tours or check out our social media or apply to be part of this certified elections observer program. So if you're interested, you can email the email here or I'll post it at the end of the presentation, and you can just say that you're interested in seeing more behind the scenes. This is mostly for when election season comes around, but it is interesting. You go through different observer programs that we have so you can see what we do here. But that is it. So the elections happen because we have all these teams working together and co-workers like you that make it all work. But let's move on and we can focus on the upcoming election that everyone's kind of preparing for. It's a big one. So the next county and statewide election we have is the presidential primary election in March of next year, which 2024 might sound kind of far away, but it is less than a year away from now. And unlike some of our recent elections, the presidential primary is a little more complicated, just because of one extra step. But in California, our primary election is like a preliminary round. So it decides who advances to the next one, or the kind of the final round, which is the general election. And in California, we do a top two system. So only the two highest within a primary contest get to move on. And this applies even if the candidates are the same party preference designation. And this goes for all of them except for U.S. President, any county central committees, and local offices. So those actually, the parties do matter for those. So that's why this one's a little different, including about this no party preference. So just for the presidential primary, any voters that have a no party preference cannot vote for a candidate of a political party for president unless the party has already authorized that their ballot can be crossed over to no party preference voters. So this changes based on each presidential election because the parties have to authorize that. So the details for that will come out later in the year, like towards the end of the year. But no party preference voters can still vote on other things like measures or nonpartisan offices that are on the ballot, generally just not the presidential role, unless the party already authorized it. If this sounds confusing right now, don't worry, we're going to talk more about this as we get closer to the election. We just wanted to give you a kind of background info on it, just so you can see why this one's a little different than our past couple of elections. All right, so now let's talk about being a poll worker. So as a poll worker, your mission is to provide every voter the opportunity to vote. And now we do have a couple different positions. We have our clerk, our inspector, and the rover. These three make up the positions that are out there at the polling sites on election day. Clerks make up most of our staff, and as a first-time poll worker, you will be a clerk, although some clerks do have a lot of experience as well. It's very varied. There is a stipend of $125 at the moment, plus 10 if you are a bilingual speaker, and we do put about 5 clerks at every location. All right, next, the inspector is usually a more experienced worker who leads your polling place, and they have extra responsibilities for preparing for the election day. So the inspector is your lead at the site. And then we have our rover, and now the rover is actually not intended to be a poll worker like how the clerk and inspector are. They're more like our divisions, like the heirs on the field, and they're trained to communicate with us about how to troubleshoot, how to assess and respond to different issues that may occur at polling places. Generally, they do have experience being a clerk or inspector, but they're just not meant for that when they're a rover, because they have to travel to different locations and troubleshoot. But again, these three are the different faces of election day, and we just appreciate the effort that they all put in. Now, we do have a couple key terms I want to go over. I might have already mentioned some of them, but you might hear this a lot, so I wanted to cover that here. Key terms like polling place, depot, and command center. So a polling place is the building or location where elections are conducted. And for poll workers, generally they refer to your assigned location where you're going to work at on election day. We do our best to assign you to one as close as possible to your residential address that you gave us on your profile. But there are some parts of the county that do fill up a lot faster because of the enthusiasm of the community there, I guess. So in that case, we either keep you as a backup in case someone has to drop out, or if you're willing to go to another location, we'll ask you if you're willing to travel just a little farther to the next city, or if you're on the border, if you don't mind going to that side of the street instead. So we really appreciate if anyone's willing to travel to your neighboring cities to help us fulfill those vacancies. Next, we have the depot, which is a supply drop-off at the end of the night on election day. The depot here is where secure items are consolidated at the end of the night. So after you're done with your polling place on election day, an inspector and one of the clerks will drop off your items at the local depot. That way you don't have to come all the way up to Martinez to drop them off here. The depot team will take that for you and deliver them on your behalf. And finally, the command center. This is your main support on election day. So a team of staff, including me, will form this call center and will answer your questions and guide you through processes. We're just going to be here and taking calls all day to help you out and walk you through anything you're not sure about. But that is it for our key terms. So now a little more about election day itself and what you're going to be doing. So election day, polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. So that means as a poll worker, you will start earlier at 6 a.m. generally and go until closing in the evening, which is around 8:30 p.m. Just because you have to do the final count and clean up at the end. So, of course, you do have your breaks during the day, and during your breaks, you are welcome to step away from the polling place too. And now I have it here. You have different tasks, generalized, I guess, as you're going to be setting up and closing your polling place, you're going to be checking in voters, and you're going to be issuing ballots during the day. So here I have a video to demonstrate some of those tasks for you. Again, setup and closing it's a team responsibility, and everyone can cycle through the different positions or tasks during the day so that you can stretch a bit and try out different things. But again, it's a team effort, so you're all there together, and you have the command center to help you out if you have any questions. So I'll play this clip. I'm going to voice over it, kind of narrate exactly what's going on in that clip, just kind of to show you what you'll be doing during the day. So let me get that going. All right, so first you're going to get a supply cart with all your supplies, and you'll unlock it to access everything, organize the supplies per station, and finish setting up your location. So any voting booths or any signage that you have to post inside or outside. It does depend on your location and how much you have to put out, but generally not a lot. Once the polls are open at 7, you can start checking in voters. So we have our electronic check-in device here. You'll ask voters for their name and address and have them answer the prompts so you can get the necessary information to issue them their correct ballot and give them a secrecy sleeve and a pen. And then finally, at the end of the night, you're going to put everything away and start packing everything up. So once everything is locked up and your space is relatively clean again, you are all done. All right, so I know that was very short, but again, this is meant to be more of an introductory orientation and not so much training. In training, we will go into more detail about this as well. Now, another thing about this too is that some polling places will actually have the option to set up in advance. So if the inspector of your team learns that they can do that, they're instructed to reach out to you or your team to see if anyone's interested and can help out. So that way you're prepared in advance for the election day morning. All right. Also, supplies are delivered to your polling place, and secure items are brought in by your inspector, so you don't need to bring anything extra yourself. As you saw, some of the equipment does include electronics. For example, our poll pad here is our electronic check-in device, and we also have our ballot marking device on the right side. They help streamline our process and make voting more accessible for our voters. So with this equipment, we've been able to check in voters quickly and more securely than we used to. So we're going to go over this more in our official poll worker training, and we'll have opportunities to give you hands-on practice so you feel comfortable and prepared for the election day. And don't worry if you're not confident with electronics. Our previous poll workers have told us that they're very easy to use and very quick to learn. So no fear, we'll go over it later. All right, so next, let's talk about what is next for you or what steps you should expect to occur in the process to become an election worker. So first is a survey after this class. We might actually send it tomorrow morning just because it is like our after hours right now. So by tomorrow noon, you should be getting an email about a survey so we can get some feedback about this orientation, any comments, constructive criticism preferably. And also if you're no longer interested in being a poll worker, like if you just wanted to see what it's about, but you can't commit, you can respond back to this email and then we can remove you from our list. So after the survey, you will just have to wait until the election cycle gets closer. So in the meantime, just know that we are working on improving and preparing for the next big election day in March. We've been working on it since the last one or even before that as well. So we're expecting some time in end of the year is when we're going to reach out to you to ask about your March availability. So we're going to email you, and if you are available, you can log into your poll worker portal and select yes. Now, I just want to say here, if you do not respond at all, we might start calling and emailing you more. So for both of our sakes, please respond yes or no if possible. Also, if you could check that your address is correct and up to date, that way when we send your stipend to you after the election, we are sending it to the correct updated address. I do have to note here that if you're a Contra Costa County employee, you do have the option to participate in the program, and it allows you to get your normally hourly pay without using your accruals on top of our stipend. So if you are interested in that as a county worker, there is a form that you and your supervisor have to sign and submit to us. And if you're a high school student or you know a high school student who might be interested, you have to be 16 by the election date. You have to submit an approval form signed by your guardian and a school administrator. The forms will be uploaded when we start emailing you all about availability so that you can download and fill them out yourself. If you are a student, just know that we won't be giving you a location until we confirm that you have sent in an approval form. And yeah. So I know even though we ask for your availability and you say yes, we still need you to confirm again your direct or more detailed assignment. So around the end of January, assuming you marked your availability as yes, you're going to receive a notification from our office about the polling place placement and a request to confirm it. So follow up with us if there's any changes needed, like you see, oh yeah, that one's nearby, but I prefer to be at this location instead, or like I absolutely cannot make that location for some reason or another. Just communicate with us and we will accommodate as much as possible. And once the assignments have been established and confirmed, our office will notify your lead, the inspector, to reach out to you and introduce themselves so that you know who to look for on election day and if there's any updates, your lead will know them in advance and explain them to you. And last but not least, signing up for our mandatory training classes. So at the moment, we plan to have 2 classes. One of them is an online Zoom class, kind of like this one, more detailed. And the second one is a in-person class. So the online class will give you an overview of the entire election day in much more detail than I have, while the in-person class is meant to do some hands-on training and review voting procedures. So both of them are mandatory because we want to make sure that you feel prepared and comfortable leading up to election day. And for the in-person training, it is spread out over 2 weeks at various locations and different times every day. So there is a little flexibility for you. Just know that based on the location, sometimes there is a size limit. So the earlier you sign up, the better that you can attend one near you. All right. I'm sorry. And after taking both training classes, we do have review materials if you're interested, and resources in your poll worker portal, and also the election website if you just want to review the information so that you feel better prepared. Okay, so that wraps up what you can expect in terms of poll working. And we know that there are sometimes questions that come up later that you don't have right now. If there is anything you're concerned about, just reach out to us and communicate. If something comes up in your schedule or you start feeling unwell, we appreciate knowing sooner than later. And, we understand life happens. We just ask that you keep us updated if anything does change so that we can remove you and be able to put someone on the wait list onto the team. So with that, just one last part before we open for questions, some FAQ. So one of the first questions we always get is, what is the dress code? So it goes without saying, I like to point out that poll workers are expected to act appropriately, stay professional, and be politically neutral in your dress, in your speech, and any materials you bring with you. You basically do represent the county. And of course, dress comfortably, but nothing overly casual and nothing with political statements on them. Take into consideration that you are going to be moving around during the day and what the weather will be like. If it is cold, I always recommend prepare an extra jacket just in case. Another popular question is, why not split the day into 2 shifts? And that is a great question. To answer it in one word, it is logistics. So shifts would mean we need to find even more poll workers when we're already hitting 1,000 poll workers right now. And also what would happen if the afternoon shift member didn't show up and the poor morning person would have to stay for the rest of the day anyways. It has happened in the past. So we do keep this idea in mind, and maybe one day it will be more viable, but it is not at the moment. Is food or gas costs provided? Also not at the moment, and we can't guarantee that every location has a kitchen, so we recommend bringing a bagged lunch or just looking up what is nearby your polling place too. Are there other volunteer positions? Actually, yes. So we do have other stipend positions. If being at the polls on election day just isn't for you, there are other ways to contribute to your community. So if you remember the depot from earlier, where we consolidate the items at the end of the night, we do need several depot teams to receive and consolidate those. So this position, the depot, is election day only for a few hours in the evening. Depending on the specific role in the depot, you have to share information like a driver's license or proof of insurance because you will have to operate a vehicle to deliver the supplies from the depot to our office here in Martinez. So the stipend for that is $50 or $75, depending on if you're a clerk or the lead of the depot. So I just want to make sure I see this. Okay, I'll answer that question in a bit. All right, and also for another position that's not a poll worker, exactly. We have extractors on election. Sorry, there we go. Extractors. So these are people who extract the ballot out of the vote by mail envelopes we receive here in the office. So we have to prepare them to be flat in order to be counted. So extraction runs for multiple days, and that depends on how many people do vote by mail. A typical day for extraction runs from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. with a lunch break. Um, it's a stipend of $75 per day worked, and if you're able to, it is best if you can do multiple days, although you don't have to. It is a little more flexible than some of the other ones because this is a multiple day kind of operation. And for both depot and extraction, they do work in teams or pairs. So if you have a family member or like a friend who might be interested, you can sign up together and pair up together. I'm sorry. So if you're interested in these positions, in addition to being a poll worker, or if you're interested in only doing these positions and not being a poll worker, just let us know. You can type it into the chat here. You can send us an email later. These are also very important roles, but there are less positions for these available than poll working, as I mentioned earlier, just because we need so many people at the polls. But yeah, I hope you're interested in them. If you do want to know more about them, there should be some resources available in your poll worker portal now that you can watch to get an idea of like what you do at the depot or what do you do during extraction too. All right, second to last question. Can I vote on election day at my assigned location? And yes, you can. You don't have to go to your specific polling place to vote. Each polling place is accessible for the rest of the county. And last but not least, is the stipend taxable income? So I'm just going to quote our website about taxes. It says, compensation paid to poll workers and other election workers is considered wage income for income tax purposes. However, the stipend payment is not subject to income tax withholding. So please consult a tax professional with questions regarding your specific situation. All right, and with that, we've reached the end of our orientation. So I hope this helped answer some questions, give you some insight about what it means to be a poll worker and what you're going to be doing. If you have any more questions, feel free to start writing them into the chat box so I can answer them after this. Again, I just want to mention, in case anyone came late or after I said it, please check that your name is actually your name or like your last name so that I'm able to give you credit for attending the class. And just to review, the next steps for you rather, is to respond to our survey and respond back to us if necessary, like if you want to be removed from being a poll worker or if you want to be doing extraction or depot specifically or in addition to being a poll worker, just respond and let us know. And then, of course, to look out for future communications because we do email you first before we give you a phone call, so just keep an eye out for that email. All right. So again, thank you all for your interest and time today. If you have any questions, it's here on this PowerPoint, but I'm going to enter it into the chat in a second too. And I will open for questions. I see some in the chat, so give me 1 second. Okay, let me give you the information here. Oh, sorry, let me send it to everyone. Here we go. Okay, so question. Do we have to take the stipend? So if you're interested in donating your stipend to like a cause or something like that, at the moment, you would have to take it, but of course, you do whatever you want with it. So if you want to donate that, go ahead. At the moment, we aren't able to donate it like directly on your behalf, but of course, it's what you want to do with it. How much time off do you get during the day-long shift? So you do get several breaks throughout the day. Part of it does depend on what your inspector decides as the lead of your site or your team, but at least half an hour per break pretty much. Up to an hour or so, but again, it depends on how busy you are in your team. What time are we allowed to vote during voting day? Can we vote during your break? Yeah, definitely voting during your break is fine. You're going to learn more about this when you go to poll worker orientation, but we'll use the ballot marking device. We can vote at any polling place within the county, so you don't have to go to a specific one. But if you do prefer to go to your assigned one, that's probably close or at the same site you're at, since we assign you to the one nearby. So you could definitely do it during your break. All right, thank you everyone else for giving me your name. In some of our larger trainings, we definitely get a lot of iPhones and iPads, which makes it hard to track down who attended. So I always want to make sure that way we don't have to give you an extra call or an email about missing class or not. Thank you. All right, we have about 4 more minutes. Are there any other questions? Again, if you are interested in being an extraction worker or for the depot, I recommend looking at your poll worker portal. There's a training tab where there'll be like training resources, and then there's a couple videos or like guides on there right now that you should be able to see and get an idea of what you'll be doing. How many breaks do we get? That is a great question. I can't do the math in my head right now. Definitely several, like a lot, but I'm just trying to figure out the math for how many exactly. It's kind of like the typical, like after so many hours, of course, you have to have a break. So for the day, at least 5, I believe. If I'm doing the math right, don't quote me on that, but you do get several breaks, of course. I know some people have gone home to like walk their dog and then pop back in or to grab lunch nearby. So those are all definitely doable. And again, I do want to mention again, the survey will be sent out later today or tomorrow morning. So just expect that email in the morning instead of tonight. And of course, any questions, you're welcome to respond there or email us or call us any other time as well. All right, if there is nothing else, sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. If you have to go, no worries, you're welcome to go. But thank you all again, and we hope you all have a wonderful night. And I'll be here if anyone's got any last minute questions. Thank you all.